Welcome to today's presentation. We're talking all about kitchen ventilation. I am Pat Palingo from Appliance. With me today is Steve Sheinkopf, Francesco Froio, and with us shortly will be a special guest panelist. We'll introduce them when they arrive here. Please use the Q&A to send us any questions for after the presentation. We had lots of questions from the registration to dive into, and so please use the Q&A to help us get through those questions as quickly as possible. And you can find our previous webinars on our YouTube channel for topics like how to start a kitchen renovation, appliances to avoid, and many more. And with all that out of the way, I'll turn it over to Steve Sheinkopf, our CEO.
Thank you, Pat. I'm not sure how many webinars we've actually done. We've been blogging for about 17 years, doing videos for about 7. We've done probably 25 webinars. And of that time, I've learned there's only 3 important things to designing a kitchen. Right? Only 3. First one is placement of the sink. Second one is whether you're getting a range or cooktop and wall oven. Third one is ventilation. Of the 3, the first 2, if you get wrong, they're inconvenient. The flow isn't right. But if you get the third thing wrong, it's unhealthy. And we're going to get into that. There's over 50 questions that we're going to probably answer today. Makeup air, we're going to get into that. I promise you that by the end of about, say, 19 to 20 minutes, you will understand whether you either have a 20-inch apartment range, one of those wolves with a double grill. You are going to know how to vent your kitchen properly. So with that in mind, little audience participation. If you cooked today or yesterday or the day before, what burner did you cook on? Let you go into that. Now, I'm willing to believe it was the front right. But let's see if I'm right in a second. This is a cafe series, very popular. A lot of people say, well, matching handles, important, I guess, for kitchen design. But there's something else going on here. That's the matching microwave over the range. If you cooked on that right-hand burner, here's what's going on, right? That burner is now 21,000 BTUs. For you lefties out there, that's 18,000. That burns roughly 23 inches off the back of the range versus 15 to 16 for an over-the-range microwave. So what do you think is happening when you're cooking on that high-speed burner? A lot of that emission is going straight back in your kitchen. So let's take a look. Let's set an example. Say bacon. You cook bacon on the burner. I do it in the oven. But what happens other than when you cook something, you get that wonderful bacony aroma? What else is really going on? Well, the process is you're burning fats. The process of burning fats is you're breaking them down into nitrogen oxide, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, formaldehyde, particulate matter. Now, if you think the answer is induction, you're partly right. You get less emission with induction or electric. You get none of the carbon monoxide, but you still get all the other stuff. Nitrogen dioxide is not a good compound to have in your kitchen, right? So if we look at kitchen design, people should really be mindful of that, but they're not. Like, we look at this as an 8-burner AGA range with no ventilation to it, right? Wonder what that kitchen's going to wonder what that picture is going to look like if they cook on it. Then we have the downdraft. This is a Wolf 8-burner, about 130,000 BTUs. That grill is an infrared grill. It's the same as a sear burner on a Lynx. Anyone try to downdraft your outside grill? You can't do it. You can't do it internally either. Then we have a professional range with a wholly inadequate vent over it in an island type installation. We'll get into those in a second too. My mother, I didn't sell this to her, but she's got this is a Wolf Dual Fuel with a 20,000 BTU at 23 inches. The meal hood's only 21 inches. So that won't work as well as it could. All right. Now, getting back to Cafe, when I did some research on this is Cafe's front page. I guess this is an influencer. I don't know who she is. I'm looking at her kitchen though. Now, GE's always done specs kind of crazy. Do it from the floor to the top of the hood. Now, the floor to the top of the hood should be 48 inches according to the specs that I read. Now, that hood is 18 inches, which is optimal. That's a good size hood for capture. We'll get into that in a second. So that means it should be 30 inches off the top of the range to the bottom of the hood. Right now, this is on the cover of Cafe's own website. That's not 30 inches. Eyeballing it, that would be 48 to 50 inches. So what's going to happen is if you place the hood wrong, we'll have other examples of this. Some of those compounds are going to dissipate before they hit the hood. They also put that pot fill in the wrong place, but that's not what this webinar is about. So what's happening, why you should buy the vent, is because indoor pollutants, due to the increased BTU and some other things we'll talk about, 2 to 5 times and up to 100 times. So you look at that AGA range, the internal, your inside environment is more polluted than the outside environment, right? Remember, the average gas range output when I started in 1986 was 37,000 BTUs or less. Now the average basic stove, gas stove, is 60,000 BTUs, with a concentration of those burners being in the front, right? Now, let's compare and contrast that to my mom's range. She had the old caloric high-low. I don't even ever remember her turning the fan on. But it's different now versus then. Now you have really high-efficient windows and building materials that are designed to keep all that air in, which is good for energy costs, but bad because all this bad air stays in the environment, in your house for a lot longer period of time. Compare and contrast that to my mom's kitchen. The windows weren't as good. So there was a natural infiltration, exfiltration of air going in your house. You don't get that now in new homes with LEED certifications, ventless constructions, and better building materials. So what we're going to do is we're going to learn the 4 basics of venting. You probably know one of them. And then we're going to look at some bad vents, and then we're going to put it all together. So the 4 basics of ventilation is CFM. As you're looking at another hood placed too high. CFM is really cubic feet per minute. How many cubes of air go through a hood in 1 minute's time, right? Average hood can be, I put 350 to 1,500, but it can go down to 250 as well. But you got to remember, 1,000 to 1,500 is the equivalent of you exhausting a room of air out of your home every minute. So we're going to make that up, and we'll talk about that later. CFM is an easy element to understand because the greater the more CFM, the more exhaust you're able to exhaust out of your kitchen. But that's not it. Now there are 3 types of blowers. There's the outside. Typically those are higher CFM, but they don't have to be, where the motor's on the outside. And then inside the hood, you've got an internal blower, and then there's what's called an inline. Inline is when the motor is placed in the duct itself. I don't happen to like that one because you need an access point through your floors in case the blower needs repair. Of the 3, I like internal because it's easy to fix. You don't have this big cap on the outside of your house. Everyone talks about quietness. I think you're going to get air rushing through your vent no matter what hood you buy. But typically your outside motor is going to be the most powerful. So let's take a look, right? Now, how much CFM do you need? Well, that really depends on how you cook. If you're doing what I call high volume, high capacity cooking, like grilling, walking, that type of stuff, you would want a greater CFM. Back in the old days, I think it was 1 CFM per 1,000 BTU, but that has nothing to do with if you cook less, you don't need as much, right? The other thing is you have to understand that the difference in the overall between getting a great hood at 600 CFM to a really powerful hood at 1,200 CFM is not a lot of money in the overall. So I would defer to get something a little bit greater. Again, high capacity, 3648, 900 to 1,500 is what I would do. And it really depends on how you're going to cook. Remember, anything over 400 CFM requires makeup air to get your occupancy permit, at least in Massachusetts and maybe in some other states as well. Capture is what everyone gets wrong. Capture is defined by height, width, and depth. What you want is a depth that covers that front burner that we all know we cook on, which is 24 inches. If you're going with a pro stove, something that's 18 inches tall works, because remember, smoke isn't like immediately evacuated your house. It's captured and then it's sent up. So the bigger the capture, the more air gets captured and the better efficiency of the exhaust, right? 24 inches deep, 18 inches tall is probably some of the best you can get, especially for pro range. It's something that you need. Venting direction, and I've got a lot of these questions, and the answer to them, respectfully, is no. There's only two directions your vent should go, either straight up or straight back. Every time that you put a transition, an elbow, whatever they call it, in the venting itself, you're reducing the static flow, right? And some of the worst ventilators that we're going to look like do that and then some, right? So really what you want to do is take advantage of gravity by either sending it up or sending it straight back, one of the two. And that's the proper venting run. Anything over that is not going to be as efficient. Duct size, I don't have the problems I did in the 80s where people putting 4-inch cloth dryer vents in, because those are grease collectors and that you're asking for problems. You want solid duct. Look at the specifications. For greater vents, it's going to be 8 to 10-inch duct or even greater, and you want it to be solid so the grease can get into the joints, right? Now, how to vent an island, really, we look at it, islands don't have that wall that kind of channels. So typically what people do is they put, they add 3 inches on either side of an island to give it a little bit bigger, more capture area. You see, if you want something like this, or something, more European like this type right here. Okay, let's look at the venting products to avoid. A lot of them we do sell, but by the time we get to you, something is better than nothing. But that shouldn't be the standard when you're talking about a new construction, right? First one is downdrafts, and I know why people get them, because you want to look through the windows, but you are sacrificing function for form big time, right? We're saying the capture matters, the venting runs matter, and you shouldn't do transitions. Well, in downdrafts, you're getting all three. You're getting a longer run with no capture, with at least one transition. So something that you really should stay away from. Now, I'm not going to say if you're moving to a home or you have a defective downdraft that you should remodel either. So we're going to look at, towards the end, we're going to look at what happens if you can't vent properly. I've got a slide based on that. But if new construction, downdraft should be definitely avoided, as is over the range microwaves. I lived in an apartment last year with no range microwave. I can tell you, if you're cooking on the front burner, it's not going to work. And that's just for steam, not for bacon or anything else. You're getting limited CFM at 350 and a capture depth of only 15 to 16. Whirlpool actually has made this bad design worse. They now have a 12-inch over the range microwave, so it matches the cabinets in one row. But they've taken a bad design to make it worse. You can even vent less with something like that. Side-O hoods, this is for the occasional designer or architect to think it's cool. What it is just a glass visor that comes out. You even lose the cabinet behind it. No capture area. This doesn't work either. It doesn't go over the front burners. It's just like a thin glass panel. Looks cool when it's out, but really it should be discontinued. And then wood and custom hoods, they do work, but only in certain situations. You take what you learn of getting the proper CFM, the proper capture area, and the right ducting, and you can make a hood out of anything. All you're really doing here for people that are planning one is you're basically putting a metal liner in and then taking the motor that's either on the outside, inline, and you're putting it inside the hood, and that attaches to the liner itself. And that can be done if you place it right, 24-inch depth, good height, and something not like this, where it's over 30 inches over the range, because once again, gases are going to dissipate. Ceiling blowers, I don't think they have capture. I think they're better ideas. I understand why people do them. That's why I put this picture in so you can see the cityscape. I used to have one in Cambridge back in the 90s where they put a high-speed bath fan and those grease around them. These are way better. The old ones were 400. These are I think 1100 CFM. But you got to look at the instructions that say it's from the countertop to the top should be 7-8 feet. And people putting them with cathedral ceilings, and that's not going to work. Now makeup air. Okay, let's just say you take my advice. You have 1200 to 1500 CFM hood over your griddle or pro range. Fantastic. But again, when you turn that on, a small room of air is going to leave every single minute. What you need to do is make up that air with fresh air, right? Now, what happens if you don't? Right? First of all, there's no news reports that people is fixating their own home. That's because air abhors vacuums, right? So air is going to make up that air somewhere. That's going to be from your attic. It's going to be from your basement, from your furnace, from your garage, anywhere it can. So it's not really healthy air. So what you want to do, and it's simple to do, is plan a damper makeup air return. And you see that with that rectangular in the middle of the kitchen, right? Is once the air goes out this way, is to have the fresh air damper return on the other side. Now, let's say you didn't or you can't put it in an HVAC or it's too late for that. Well, the law stipulates at least 10 feet away from the range on the opposite side, so you're not breathing in that exhaust. Brown sells some smart dampers that I think you can coordinate with the hood so it turns on when the hood turns on. Okay, ventless. I don't like this particular ventless. I don't like ventless at all because you're not removing any of the gases. What you're doing is removing some of the odor, and that's pretty much, and some of the grease, and that's pretty much it. On something like this, what happens is those slats is where the air comes out, so all those gases get blown in your face. If you have to go ventless, go with a triangular hood, because what happens is it comes down like this and then it goes out. The ventless pieces are on the side, so at least goes out that way, so it's not going in your face. Now, what do you do if you can't vent, have a bad vent like a downdraft? Well, first thing to anybody, now that you know about venting, is to turn the vent on, but open your windows. Cook in the back burners if you have an over-the-range microwave if you can. Induction electric are better than gas. What I did, and I didn't have to, is Sharp has an air cleaner. Now HEPA cleaners only go to 0.3 of a micron, so the particulate matter, odor, and grease are going to get captured by that. Now Sharp has a plasma cluster, and I think some of the other ones that have different filters to it that can remove some of the gases as well. You want to look at that. I use a Sharp plasma cluster, but that's from 4 or 5 years ago. I'm sure there are other units that might be able to do the job, particularly. But however, gases typically are smaller than the 0.3 of a micron, so you have to get something probably pretty good, or at least the Sharp works on some of the gases, not all. All right, one last thing. This has nothing to do with ventilation. I know a lot of you are buying appliances from the questions. You would be very unfortunate not to buy them on sale. I think Black Friday is still going on from last year, but really the holidays, you want to look for a holiday, which is Memorial Day, which is coming up, which goes into July 4th, which goes into tax freaking, which goes into Labor Day, which goes into Black Friday. Just be mindful, speak to your salesperson, and make sure that you don't buy it the day before it goes off 33%. So let's take some key takeaways. Proper CFM, depending on how you cook, right? Mind the capture, get something 24, get something, if you're cooking on the front burners, you're cooking a lot, get something that covers them at 24 inches. You want to vent straight up, straight back. The more transitions you put in, the least effective it becomes. Follow the right, use the right duct and follow the right specifications. Don't hang it so high that it won't work. And with that in mind, I'm going to bring it back to our leader, Pat Palingo. I want to thank you very much for this. We have a really good resource, which is basically 60 pages of what I just said. I know Pat's going to send it to you, but it's the Ventilation Buyer's Guide. We keep writing that, and it's a really good frame of reference if you have to give it to your contractor or something. And for all you Mass residents, if you want to schedule a showroom visit, there's a QR code for that. So that in mind, we're going to answer a lot of questions.
Cool. Thank you, Steve. Yes, like Steve said, we had a lot of questions submitted during registration. We're going to dive into as many as possible here with the rest of our time. With lots of specific questions, we tried to take ones that were more general, and we can talk more specifically with folks who have more unique installations. But I think these questions will do a good job explaining the basics, and we can dive in further where we need to. So Steve and Fran, first question, a lot of folks have this situation where they don't have access to an outside wall to vent. So we're wondering about the effectiveness and cost of recirculation kits that are available. Steve touched on that briefly during the presentation specifically, but do we want to dive in there?
Brandon, I've talked for 20 minutes. You can start.
Sounds good. So I was just going to say, like Steve said, there's certain times where unfortunately you don't have the ability to vent out. And while, we wouldn't necessarily recommend recirculating, if that is your option, it is better than nothing. So the way that that's going to work is really just taking all that air, sucking it up. There's a charcoal filter that's built into that hood that is filtering out that air and the odors and things like that and pushing it right back into the room. So, it's not really venting it outside, obviously, but I'd say it's still better than nothing. One of those things that you want to definitely keep doing if you are recirculating is make sure you change that charcoal filter. So a lot of people, they buy a recirculating kit and they'll never change that charcoal filter. And over time, it really does nothing if you're not changing that as that gets kind of filled up with all the grease, odor, smells, things like that. So depending on how often you're using it, at least 6 to 12 months, you definitely want to change that filter. But again, it's better than nothing, I would say. But obviously, when you have the ability to vent out, that is definitely the better option.
The one thing I did wrong during this presentation, first of all, definitely open a window. Definitely open a window. I know we're in New England, in the wintertime may not be convenient. The one thing I did wrong is I didn't do enough research on air cleaners, because an air cleaner, even a HEPA, it's only 0.3 of a micron, and gases are far smaller than that. But if you get, the Sharp can do nitrogen dioxide, and I got to follow up. I think there's air cleaners that you can think of getting, but again, charcoal is, like you said, it's better than nothing, but that shouldn't be the standard for people that can do it right. Window opening, air cleaners that I've got to get back to you guys on. Really, that's all you can really do if you can't vent to the outside.
There was a question around cost there. And obviously there's going to be a range, but Brad, what might be the cost for recirculation?
Not expensive. It depends on what it is. You're looking at European types, it's maybe 500 to 1,000. The Brone that I showed is like what, $300, not even 250, 300. Not a lot of money. It really depends. If you want something really nice, the focal point stuff, 500 to 1,000, maybe a little bit more, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and that's the hood there, on top, the recirculating kit itself. If you're just looking at that, I mean, that could be $50, $100, depending on model and things like that.
Not a lot.
Do you want to dive in there, friend? So you're talking about sometimes you may be buying the blower itself, what you see from the outside. Sorry, maybe you're buying the hood, what you see from the outside, and then you may need to purchase a blower separately.
Yeah, so depending on what you're buying, you want to make sure that the hood, most times, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of hoods come with a built-in internal blower, like Steve was going through those blower types. Sometimes a hood may come with just the hood, and then you need to purchase a separate internal, inline, or external blower. Not always, but sometimes that may be a case, so you definitely want to check that out as well. Recirculating kit would really all the time be an additional piece. Not every hood has the capability to recirculate air, so you want to make sure the hood that you're buying does have that capability if that's something you need to do.
Yeah, most of the brands like Thermador, Wolf, they do hood shell, and then they do the blower separately. On our line, it's all integrated. On every Ventless, you don't have to buy the blower separately; comes inside as well. Just gotta be mindful of 2-piece, 1-piece, but typically most appliance stores, hopefully, would a big if always would be able to counsel you on which is which. Quite honestly, it shouldn't be too hard.
Cool. Another question here about venting requirements. Do venting requirements change depending on if you have a gas, electric, or convection range? What type of considerations go into choosing a vent based on what you're using?
Well, convection's a fan system inside the oven. The difference between gas, induction, and electric is really efficiency. Now, here's what happens when you turn on a gas burner, right? Is the flames spread outward, but you lose a lot of that heat through the sides, which is technically why you want to vent it more. There's also, the people that are trying to ban it will talk about gas leaks in the system, gas leaks in your house. But induction is the most energy efficient at 90%. So typically you don't need to vent as much, and there's less of those compounds going in your house. So once again, it really depends on how you cook. I think if you're going to wok cook and you can on induction, you still need something a little bit better. You still need more, but typically if you were to compare apples to apples, you need less venting for induction than you in electric than you would for gas.
Okay, thank you. And then we talked about this a little bit. Let's break this up into a couple of different pieces here. Let's talk about the baffle versus mesh filters. Those are different options that are available when you buy a hood. You want to talk about what the difference is and what the pros and cons of each might be?
Yeah, typically the baffle filters are metal baffle filters, which had always started kind of with the Pro series ventilation typically, but really starting to come down now. You'll see those in chimney hoods and really kind of everywhere too. With the baffle, you don't have the mesh, so it really kind of the air travels quicker and easier through a metal baffle filter, as opposed to the mesh where it can kind of get a little bit more clogged up there. I'd say also with the baffle filter, it's easier to clean, and a lot of times those are also dishwasher safe, so you can kind of just throw those in and clean them that way. Whereas the mesh filters, really those need to be replaced after a certain period of time as well, kind of like that recirculating kit. Those mesh filters could definitely kind of get clogged and dirty and should be replaced every so often as well.
When I first started, everything was mesh. But if you look at every restaurant in the world, it's all baffle because the air travels through the baffle easier than it does in the mesh. So baffle is going to be better. And again, like Fran said, you can find baffles in a lot of different hoods if you look.
And then the second part of this, and Steve mentioned this during the presentation, but 24-inch depth is not always easy to find. 24-inch depth of the hood. So would a 20 to 22-inch work? You guys want to take that? 23 would be optimum. 23, 24. Typically it's 24. We have one that's 23. I mean, again, it really depends. If you cook on the back burners, it won't matter. If you're cooking on that front burner, every inch you go from 23 down, it's going to be less efficient. It'll still work. It probably won't work to maximum. I'm getting all this air out efficiency. Cool. We talked about, so this is a question about looking for we chose this question because we're focused on the quietness part there. Looking for a powerful hood, but extremely quiet. What Steve mentioned that during the presentation, but what goes into, what's the reality of the noise level when choosing the kitchen vent?
Well, there's no zone levels published on any of these hoods. Now, the ones that are supposed to be quiet or advertised as such, they won't tell you that you're still going to hear air rushing through that hood. So I don't think you're going to find a low zone yet effective, high powerful exhaust hood. To be quite honest, I don't see it, and I'm not a true fan of the outside because I just don't think it looks very nice. And I'm not a true fan of inline because if you don't get the access point right, then how is it ever going to get fixed? Not that blowers ever not work, but should that happen, how do you'd have to like cut through your floorboards or something like that. So that's just my take on it. I just, when I turn on my hood, I just grin and bear it for the time that I'm cooking, to be quite honest.
Yeah, agreed. We don't really, there's really no such thing as a quiet, like extremely quiet hood like that. And like you said, Steve, that's where some people might get an external blower and put it outside, but then, you have a big box on the outside, it can be more difficult to service. You're moving that noise somewhere else as well. So depending on where that box is going. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of things to look at when buying a hood for sure. I wouldn't say one's going to be really significantly quieter than another.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have them turned on in the and we'd be lying to you say if they were quiet. And we're not going to do that.
And next question here is 600 CFM enough for induction, or do you need more CFM? And do you want to take that one? And this question leads into that conversation around induction versus gas, and how do you size your hood appropriately?
Well, it really depends on how you cook. I think 600 is more than enough with an induction. I'm assuming it's a 30-inch range here, right? But I think it's more. To give you an idea, SKS came out with this pro range top that's one induction burner, one sous vide, and one pro gas at 18,000 BTU, 15,000 in the back, and they say it's makeup air compatible. That said, on 30-inch, 600 should be enough, depending on how you cook. Once again, if you get a big wok and you're going to cook for your whole family in a wok, it might not be enough, quite honestly. But I think 600 on induction is fine. I think 400 normal use, fine for induction.
This question's, I just want to know what to look for to get a good basic vent for simple cooking. So for the person, this is for maybe the most general situation. What should somebody look for when they're browsing or visiting a store?
Well, again, what is simple cooking? But I'm assuming it's boiling on the stove top, and you're just trying to get the hot air out and whatever gas, whatever compounds come from the gas. Again, there's not much difference in price between 200 and 400. So you wouldn't want to go over 400, because then you trigger the makeup air. So I would say 400 CFM for simple cooking. The real problem is as the burners have become more. Remember when I first started, a pro range burner was 15,000. Now a regular range burner is like 18,000 on the front. The problem is the capture. Really, I would, again, depending, I would certainly look for a 23-inch deep to cover that. Unfortunately, if I would say to you, get something like 21 inches, but cook in the back burners, it's probably not something you're going to do. Something that's 23-inch basic hood for simple cooking should be fine.
All right, next up. This is the classic replacing gas and switching to induction. How might that affect ventilation requirements?
Well, first of all,
similar,
okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say similar to the last one. It really depends again on how you cook, but induction in general, requires less ventilation. But again, if you do a lot of high heat cooking, wok cooking, things like that, you still want to have something powerful enough to kind of clear out all the smoke, all the odor in the kitchen. So in general, less requirements with induction, really. But again, you don't want to skimp just because you can. If you do a lot of high heat, kind of high smoke cooking, you definitely still want something there that's going to do the trick there.
Yeah, they used to be for the people that were in the business 80s, it was one BTU per thousand I think it's 1 CFM per 1,000 BTU, and that's silly because if I don't use it and you walk, we need totally different hoods, right? And by the way, replacing gas with induction, if this is new construction, great, but if it isn't, we wrote a blog post on it. This isn't a walk in the park by any means. You need plumber, at least in this day, you need plumber, electrician, you need 220. If it's a range, you need 220 50 amp volts. So that goes to, you're gonna have to change your wiring too. That's a $3,500 multi-discipline change out. We'll include the blog post where there's 6 steps to it. Just make sure you cover all 6. Unless it's new construction, you're just demolishing and starting over.
Cool. Let me, depending on the ceiling height, in an island setup, is ventilation required no matter what type of cooktop a person has? This is, I think, Steve, this is like a question around some of those images you shared during the presentation of really glamorous looking kitchens with either an island hood or no hood. Do you want to speak to why it's important to still consider ventilation in those instances?
All right, I'll give you a graphic story. We were demoing like a DCS grill, and we were dumb enough to use it and put it against the store in Framingham where there was glass. And we didn't do it all that much. We cooked like, I think maybe 10 pieces of chicken. It wasn't all that long. But the grease that was on that glass, it was like palpable. Now this is electric and induction, I get it. But over time, what we did in 20 minutes, you're going to do over a period of years. So I think ventilation is extremely important personally. I think a lot of banning gas is a little bit overblown. The health repercussions, you have to make your own determination. I think there's something to it, but probably not to the extreme that's been in the literature. But I just think from an overall, you need a vent or it's going to go somewhere, and that somewhere is in your house, quite honestly.
Yep. This question, is it worth staying within a brand? Let's say it was the same brand as a cooktop for the hood. Is that worth considering? Is that just, or is it just marketing?
Depends on the hood. I think a lot of it's marketing because it's so expensive to buy some of these hoods. We have our own hoods that are certainly cheaper with better lighting, better features. But really, I don't care if it says Francesco brand on it, right? What you have is a template of how to vent. 24 inches deep, tall, and then pick the CFM for how you cook. Now, again, if you're doing induction, you probably don't need as tall a hood. But again, if you could do a 23-inch deep, shorter hood with induction, that's probably what I would do. At least 400 CFM or more if you're gonna grow griddle.
Cool. This question is about the downdraft with the gas range. We talked about that briefly, but do you want to dive into our thoughts on using a downdraft with a gas range, and how that is actually vented? What goes into actually venting that installation type?
Well, you're making it easy on yourself, but it won't be optimum. There's one brand that you can buy as a downdraft for a range. It's called the Katora. And what they do is it is a down vent, and then the motor goes somewhere else. It can go in the side cabinet, it can go in the floor, it can go different places, not there because obviously a range is there. Typically on a cooktop, you've got the kind of like that duct transition or the blower right in the cabinet. You can't do that with a range because you get range there. So look up the Brone Katora. I think we have a blog post on how to do that, but I put asterisks all over it because A, I don't believe in downdrafts. And B, this is a very tricky, tight installation. So you gotta download the specifications for that particular event, hand it to your contractor, and ask them if he or she can do that. But if you're doing it through the toe kick, you're making it ductless, right? And I think Thermador has that. Do they have that still, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not for the range, but yeah, their downdraft has that ability. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not really fond of this, but it's the only one. And once said, it's better than nothing. And I would never get on a webinar and say, you've got to spend $30,000 to properly ventilate. I mean, open windows, let's look at some air cleaners. You know, I know the Sharp does some, and there's probably more that might work for you. And then replace your downdraft. It's not anywhere near optimum. It's better than nothing.
Cool. And now we'll transition to the questions that we have in in the Q&A panel here, we have about 20 minutes left to dive into. We have lots of questions, guys, so we can go through these as quick as we can here. Let me see. This is a question that was submitted a lot. I'll add that there. Do wall ovens require venting? Do you guys want to talk about that?
No. So any of the electric and new electric wall ovens, they all self-vent. There's no extra venting that's needed there. A lot of times with those, you'll see like just like a range kind of, not vents, but the range oven itself will kind of release the heat. You'll see kind of in the front of the door a lot of times it kind of releases some of that heat, not hot heat like that, but no extra venting's required for wall ovens like that.
Well, should they require venting? Mm-hmm. Yes. Do they? Thermador was the last one to actually do that. That was, I want to say, 30 years ago. They used to have one that vented to the outside. The truth of the matter is they probably do need to be vented, but there's no available vents for any of them anymore. So the answer to the question is probably, but you can't buy one.
Next up, makeup air question. Will the makeup air return drastically change the indoor climate? That is a consideration in some different parts of the country. Even us, us in the Northeast have winter to worry about. Do you guys want to take that?
Yeah. So really with the makeup air, so it's not really going to be like Steve said, it needs to be at least 10 feet away from the hood itself. So it's not really, the makeup air system's not necessarily going to be in the kitchen there too. A lot of times, again, every situation can be unique, but a lot of times that will be in an unfinished side of the basement. And really all that's happening is that when the hood turns on, there's a damper that opens. And it's not necessarily blowing air into the home. It's just allowing that air to naturally come into the home that way. So it's not like a fan that's blowing cold air or hot air from the outside into the home. Just while the hood's working, it's kind of allowing that air to just seep into the home somewhere, not necessarily where you are right then and there in the kitchen. So not a drastic change temperature-wise, heat, cold, anything like that.
I think for Southerners, you're eliminating hot air, and in the summer you're bringing in hot air. In the wintertime, you're probably bringing in a fair amount of cold air, though. I think. Not a total amount, because again, the intake is not that huge. It's not like this whole port of air is going to come crashing down in your house. It's not that big, but you got to believe that it's, and you got to believe that that it's going to change a little bit. Mm-hmm. But we haven't had that massive complaint of people saying, "I'm wearing my hood because I turned on my hood." So
another makeup air question. Different types of the. You want to talk about when it's, is there a difference between the powered makeup air versus the passive damper?
Yeah, no, I mean, really, that passive opening air is kind of what
it's a damper.
Really that's the unit there. Again, there could be some unique situation that maybe, that might even be more of a question for an HVAC expert if there's like a specific issue with that home. But no, honestly, I could tell you that never really had to recommend something like that.
I've never asked the question, and quite honestly, that doesn't mean I shouldn't. And I'll look into it certainly. But really, what makeup air is really a backdraft damper.
Yeah.
Right. So when you shut your hood off, that damper closes. Right. When you turn the hood on, damper opens and lets in that fresh air into your home. I think by their very nature, they're both kind of passive, quite honestly. But I can certainly look into the different kinds of systems for you.
Might be worth just diving into what's the common type of makeup air installation that we see up here in Massachusetts?
Well, it really depends. I think that for new construction, if you're pulling COs and everything else, I think it's included in most HVAC systems. And people have been stung so much. This has been on the books since 2007. And from 2007 to 2010, no one took it seriously. But when you can't get a CO and then you have to like incorporate it somehow, you learn. And that seems to be the way that people are doing it. When they're not doing it the second way, I said, kind of the ad hoc, we forgot type of way. It's mostly done. Most contractors, having been probably hurt like in 2010, understand it's going through your HVAC. We don't get very many. We don't sell very many of those Brown smart dampers, do we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. Those are the individual piece that you would put 10 feet away from your stove.
One more question about the recirculating style. Does the recirculating system remove particulates or just the odors?
Charcoal does actually. HEPA and other charcoal filters do remove particulates depending on the actual filter. What they don't do, what no HEPA filter does, is remove the gases. For that, you would need HEPA in a separate filter. Like I know the Sharp Plasma Cluster does a few gases, but you would need something other than HEPA, or something other than even a good charcoal filter to remove particulates.
And then the question about, is there a calculation for CFM, or what goes into sizing the right type of hood? The manufacturer specifications, or what goes into that?
There's no general specs, and the information that was out there back when I started in '86 it's so antiquated. It really depends on how you use and what kind of stove you have. Because, stoves now, I mean, you're talking about a 48-inch Blue Star, it's 25,000 BTUs. It's 20, the new SKSs are 23. You would need something better for that. For stir frying, grilling, and all that, I would just defer to 12 to 1500 CFM, quite honestly. And really, the depth you're looking at is 24 inches. The height you're looking at is 18 for somebody that really cooks, right? I mean, what you want to do is take a look at the way restaurants do it. I mean, they cook all the time. And you look at them, it's baffle filters. You may want to go 27 inches deep if you're really cooking a lot of high capacity, but at least 24, at least 18. And if you feel you need more than that, certainly. But 12 to 1500 is the minimum for grilling, stir frying, and doing a lot of cooking.
Yeah, and you'll see too on some brands, depending on the brand, they may even have their own ventilation guide a lot too that will kind of say, depending on which range you're going with, here's kind of like the minimum that we recommend. Sometimes you'll get, and a lot of that too depends on the town, the inspector, and a lot of times they will go by that. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely some general calculations out there, like 100 CFM for every 1,000 BTU, add 500. But it really depends on how you're cooking. Those ventilation guides by the manufacturer are a good start as well.
All right, thanks, guys. I think that's a good spot to leave it for today. Sorry.
That's 30 minutes of questions.
Yeah. We have, we'll be sharing we will be sharing a recording of our session today with the presentation. We have lots of questions that we can dive into that were really specific. We can follow up afterwards, and so be on the lookout for that email, and we'll be posting this to our YouTube channel as well. With that, I think that's any final words, Steve?
Don't buy the vents that you shouldn't, and really consider how you cook. And if you're cooking a lot or in the front burner, then it's 24 inch, 18, and 600 or greater for CFM, and you'll be fine. And if you can, go to the slide that we're going to send you that shows you all the things that you should do instead of that. But take venting seriously, and turn on your vent when you have one.
Yeah. After you do all the research, let's at least use it once you get it.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Have a great day, everybody.
Yeah.